What's up, chat? How's it going, everybody? It's Monday. We are indulging in a little bit of mayhem today because it was a big weekend for Warhammer 40,000 this weekend. We had so many events. If you watched my coverage, my Best Armies of Warhammer 40K coverage from yesterday, or from this morning, I made it yesterday, but it is this morning, you will know that this weekend was insane. The amount of just absolutely insane number of events that went down this weekend was crazy. For the last couple of weeks, we haven't really seen a similar level of kind of participation from the community, but it seems like all of these new sort of balance updates and these new changes to the game have been getting people more excited about playing. And so we have been seeing tons and tons of people, tons of events pop up, crazy results from the events. The metagame is incredibly fluid right now. I even had people coming to me while it was at Nova, and they were like, look at this top 16, look at this top 32 for Nova. It's crazy. There's basically every faction represented, and that's basically what we're seeing in terms of singles play. But the same thing is happening for team play as well. And so what I want to do today is go through a couple of team events. I'm going to readjust my viewer for BCP here. We had the Glasshammer teams at Nottingham go down 24 teams, looks like 120 players. And we also had the Western Canadian Team Championship. There were actually, in fact, 2 team championships, if I am reading this correctly. I believe that Canada had 2 team championships this weekend, which is crazy. Also, Northern Wales Team Championship, just an enormous number of team games. So in addition to all of the singles events that went down, we had crazy amounts of team results to take a peek at, and so that's what we're going to be looking at this time around. Idaval Heimdall in the chat, Necron Supremacy with OBS and Sphalanx. What a sick list, dude. It's always cool to see those OBS lists in there. Also, the Convergence of Dominion, probably underplayed piece, especially with the Lich Guard bricks. Huge congrats on the dub there, dude. That was super duper cool. Time for Eldar and Genestealer cult meta. Haven't had that yet in this edition, yeah. Could you imagine? It's just the last like year of 10th edition is just the first year again. It's just that we have little elves this time instead of big elves. But Genestealer cults, somehow their lists are entirely unchanged. They've went 3 full years. It's a planned generations in the making. They went 3 full years of Warhammer 40K, and they have never changed their list once. If you built your list on release in whatever 22, you're good. You nailed it. No notes. Just keep playing that. You got 3 Reductive Saboteurs and a bunch of Primuses. All good, dude. I guess you could put your Beneficti in your list. That's the only difference. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Cool. So that's what I want to hop in and talk about today. So previously, let's talk about the previous metagame for team events. We saw essentially a big dichotomy in teams. Let me pull up the top placing team here. Because Knights and because Knights and Skew was so strong, that was essentially it diverged the team metagame. So obviously in teams you can have one of each faction represented. So each codex can be included one time in your team roster. And almost every team took 1 Knight and 1 Chaos Knights, and they used that to skew their pairings to the point where they could kind of navigate the pairing process, force their opponent to overcommit anti-tank stuff, so then they could try to navigate their Knights, especially Imperial Knights, into matchups that they would just beat out. And many times we also saw teams triple down. So some teams took like Knights, Imperial Knights, Solar Spearhead with the like upgraded Talaman Dreadnoughts, and Chaos Demons with gridded clean ones. And they basically they went all in on tank meta and tried to overwhelm their opponent's ability to actually kill them. Now, in fairness, those teams didn't tend to do super well. They did okay. The skew meta kind of was fine for them. But it was inconsistent because if you ran into a team that had appropriate anti-tank, or you had a team that knew how to deal with those matchups, then you would just lose. So most of the teams ended up being the teams that brought counters to this mass knight builds is what ended up doing well. Now what we're seeing now, and I'm interested to see. Let's see, this Glasshammer was actually had more people involved, is a much less of a focus on knight players. It looks like we're still including a single knights list in our team composition in order to try to force people into responding to it with anti-vehicle stuff. However, we are no longer skewing super heavily into those defensive matchups. So that's the biggest takeaway so far. GSP's been good with good players for a while. Yeah, for sure. The problem with GNC calls, and I do think it is a problem. The problem with GNC calls is that it's so good, and so some factions can't beat them because it's just too many units. It's too many models, and they alpha strike too hard. However, it's hard to play. It takes a long time to play, and it's very expensive to play. So the only reason, in my opinion, the GCR called aren't running Roughshot is that people don't want to play with them. I think it just ruins your own experience unless you are a GCR call like dyed in the wool. Robin Roberts type, where all you do is play GCR call all the time, 24/7. GCR call for 1,000 years, Morty. Then you may not enjoy the experience, and so I think a lot of people have cut them for that. So we do have some GCR call in this one. So Bloodbath and Beyond won the Western Canadian Team Championship, which was 100 players. It looks like it was teams of 6, interestingly, and it was how many players it ended up? 96 players. So what is that? 16 teams, I think. I think that number checks out. And Bloodbath Beyond went 4-1 to take it down. Now I have to search them back up. Unfortunately, stupid BCP doesn't let you just view the list from the thing. You have to look in the roster. But I complain enough to BCP about features that I would like. So we'll complain to about that one later. So what are we rocking today? So we do have one Imperial Knights list. It is using agents. Running double Serastus Knight Atropos, Serastus Knight Lancer, Calidus Assassin double, Helverin plus Canis Rex, yeah. Double Serastus Knight. Ooh, excuse me. It's a pretty good counter. I think a lot of singles events went to single Atropos. But this, for teams particularly, you can fight into other knight armies and just kill them with this one. So I imagine that's what we see. Although, in fairness, that's likely to change now that we're getting a new codex for the faction. We also see Chaos Space Marines over here running Creations of Bile, which is interesting. Now, Creations of Bile is really cool in this seat because it's really high scoring. It's so aggressive, which is what you want out of kind of a closer army. So a lot of times we have these armies that are skews. It will skew the pairing process. Armies that are a little bit more well-rounded, which I imagine something like Daemons would be. Yeah, Demonic Incursion, a bunch of random bullshit, basically. Which is very good at zeroing out games. We have 3 Beasts of Nurgle. We have Fleshhounds. So this detachment, it is a little aggressively melee oriented, but Chaos Demons oftentimes can 10-10 matchups you don't want to see because they're so good at scoring. Any faction that has good utility and lots of up-down potential, lots of redeployment, repositional effects, is oftentimes taken as an army that is simply going to play for a draw. It's just kind of try to knock down its bad matchups to its level, right? So even if it loses every game, if it only loses by 1 point or it zeroes the game, then it's fine. Chaos Demons oftentimes take it in that way. However, if you play an army like this, so Creations of Bile, this has a little bit of shooting, so it's a little bit more well-rounded than oftentimes we see, where it's just literally nothing but Possessed and like Legionnaires running across the table. Armies like this oftentimes are taken in order to punish matchups that can't deal with the melee pressure. And once they push through with these massive numbers of melee infantry, they just score crazy amounts of points. So they're trying to orient themselves into a matchup that doesn't have good counter melee threats, and then they simply just bowl it over for a 20-0. And so oftentimes what we see is like Gracious Bile just tries to play huge, crazy board control. Which is pretty cool. So this one's, like I said, a little bit more well-rounded, and at the smaller team events, that is more important. So 8-player team events, you can oftentimes, like, you could specialize each player very particularly. When you get to 5 and 6-man team events, you do tend to have to play a little bit more well-rounded, because you may end up playing into matchups that are determined more by luck than by pairing skill, just because of how little control you have over the process. But obviously, the each player will still have a role. So we're running Cypher, we're running Fabulous Bill, we're running a Chaos Sword Prime Test Subject for +1 damage, Cultist Mob, Legionaries, Chosen, more Chosen. So big Chosen for Fabius to go into, because then they get damage blanks, plus you can eat damage on the little surgeon guy. So you basically have 2 damage blanks effectively in the unit. And then they also gain +1 strength and toughness from his leadership ability. Legionnaires is oftentimes, I guess the Chaos Sword sometimes goes in the Chosen squads, and oftentimes will go into the Legionnaires just for their wound rerolls. But I think it depends on the situation. And then we have 2x10 possessed. Those are good in Creations of Bile, because any of the statistical improvements that you roll up are great on possessed, except for ballistic skill. That's the only one that you want to miss. But you have Fabulous Bile, so you can reroll ballistic skill if you want to, if you pull it up. So you're good in basically any situation. So you're okay with movement, you're okay with weapon skill, you're okay with strength. All of that is totally fine. The only thing you don't want to get is ballistic skill. The Chosen do use ballistic skill if you roll it, if you accidentally reroll into it, because they have a bunch of combi weapons and stuff, but it's certainly not the one you want to reroll, or you want to roll into, especially if all of your shooting is destructors, because they do not benefit from the detachment ability, so they won't get the buff. So we do have 3 Predator Destructors to hang out in the back. Heyo, Bucket of Steel Cable. What's up, dude?
Bucket of Steel Cable donated $6.99 through Super Chat. Do you think AdMech will do better into a meta of T3-1 wound bodies whose guns don't like stealth and 5+ invulns?
I think AdMech can do better into a meta of T3-1 wound bodies whose guns. Yeah, like Gene Stealer Cult particularly. I think so. And if Knights become great, AdMech do have a relatively positive Knights matchup. So like maybe. That said, like AdMech, they get out attrition by G-Stealer Cult quite a bit, and they also sort of get the hit back quite a bit too. Where AdMech is good at killing G-Stealer Cult, but like mass Handflame or Acolyte hybrids are lethal for like Skitari Hunter cohort, for example. So it goes both ways. I think both armies play kind of similar. I think you end up kind of zeroing out in a lot of situations. Probably positive for AdMech, but I don't think it's 100%. Like they just win the GSC matchup. So we've got double Chaos Rhinos to carry around the Chosen units and the Legionaries potentially. We have 24 transport capacity for all the Chosen plus their attached characters, and then backline shooting from the Predator Destructors. Really aggressive melee push from the Possessed. So a lot of utility here, or disruption units, I should say. The Chosen and the Legionnaires, you can advance in charge with its macro tensile sinews, I think is the stratagem to advance in charge. So even the oh no, macro tensile sinews is just +1 strength. It is auto stimulants, excuse me, to give your infantry advance in charge. So even the Legionaries with the wound rerolls can still advance, and they're high OC, they're OC2 apiece, and so you can use these to just bowl your opponent off of objectives while you set up the Possessed to then just like hit them. And if you can commit all the Possessed all at once, your opponent will kill them. That's the hardest thing in the world to kill. They're just heavy infantry. But if you dedicate all 20 and you get good detachment ability statistic improvements, then you're a lot of times opponents, you just lock them into their deployment zone. They get stuck. Bile experiences jail with 3 wound models, but Rhino score. Yeah, that's about it. That's a good way to discuss it. Essentially, you're throwing Chosen onto objectives. You're throwing Possessed into the heart of their army. And then you're just like sitting in the back and generating points essentially passively and trying to get that big 20. There are some situations though where, again, like if you have good anti-melee stuff, or you have the ability to just sweep the 3-wound infantry. So like, you're running into a bunch of like, I don't know, World Eaters, Forge Fees or something. And you're like, uh-oh. There is a universe here where I simply get picked up off the table in a couple activations. And then you lose that like pressure, then things get really bad for them. So they're trying to dodge those in the pairing process, which is why these armies are much more widely seen in team events. Now, we also do have Death Guard still being played in Champions of Contagion, which is interesting. So it's kind of Plague Marine focused. This feels like it's a little bit of a similar build, sort of just an attritional build. But in Champions of Contagion, we do have really crazy... Well, first of all, it's very flexible, because Champions of Contagion can switch its Contagion of Nurgle out. So you can play to whatever your opponent's trying to do at any one time, right? You can give yourself -1 to hit until the point where they're trying to out-OC you, and then you drop their OC characteristic, and you take all their objectives. They also they can do 5-up critical hits, and I believe that's the case, right? Yeah, Blessings of Filth is 5-up critical hits, and then they can do full hit and wound rerolls. So you can get a lot of damage out of Plague Marine units, and that looks like is what we're trying to do. So I think this army is largely just like killing you in the midboard. So it's Death Guard are a traditional answer to like these big heavy like tanky enemies. So if your opponent is running Imperial Knights or whatever, Death Guard can kill them. It's not perfect, or at least in the past it wasn't like 100% immediate 20-0 matchup, but Death Guard usually won that one anyway. And if you're ever trying to stat check in the middle, Death Guard will straight up just kill you, especially with the Plague Marine units, right? The Plague Marines just represent like just an astronomical amount of damage within 12. So they're really short range. The reason that they haven't seen too much play in singles events is because they don't have the ability to reach out and grab you like the Lords of Contagion do with the Deathstrike Terminator bricks plus the heavy plate launcher shooting. However, once you get close to them, they just kill you straight out. So it seems like what we're trying to do here is answer a little bit of those tougher matchups where you're playing Knights, you're playing Chaos Knights, you're playing Grid and Clean ones, and you're just putting them in the middle of the table, and this army is just going to straight up murder you. So it's Biologist Putrefier, so 5-up critical lethals for the big Plague Marine squad, plus a Malignant Plaguecaster, so he also gives you sustains. So you're potentially full reroll 5-up critical lethal sustained hits, and rerolling hits and wounds. With 3 plasma guns, excuse me. So you get 6 shots off of the 2 damage with hit rerolls. You're fishing for 5s. 5-ups are 1 lethal hit, 1 sustained hit. You're giving your opponent a toughness debuff. If you use this strat, you also get a wound reroll on the sustained hit. So you're almost certainly handing your opponent somewhere around 6 or 7 2 damage saves from the shooting alone. Then you also have 2 Plague Spearers, so 2 Torrents, plus 2 Blight Launchers, so 2 more D3 blast weapons, plus the Malignant Plaguecaster has another Torrent, and the Putrefier has another blast weapon. All of those get all the bonuses. So it's a lot. You don't necessarily even need to give them the strat to reroll, because they reroll their wounds innately if they disembark a Rhino, which they almost certainly will be doing. We then have 2 just regular units of Plague Marines, which are just good utility. OC2. They're not super fast, but they do have enough punching power to knock out other like medium infantry units really easily. Then double Deathstrike Terminators, backline of shooting. We do not have a Lord of Virulence. We have a Lord of Poxes. Fascinating. Oh, that's cool, actually. So without using Mortarian's Hammer, we don't have a way to project affliction onto enemies that consistently, but the Lord of Poxes does. So he makes his unit 18-inch load up, and then he also extends his own contagion aura. So I believe the math is that battle round 3 onwards, he can get to a 12-inch contagion aura. So if you are at, let's say, bottom of round 3, I'm going to double check that that's correct. I think that's right. I think it goes from 3 to 6 to 9. and then stays at 9 for the rest of the game. But he goes to a 12, so he can disembark a Rhino 3 inches and then just advance. So he can go 8 plus an advance roll plus a 12-inch Contagion Aura. Yeah, Battle Round 3 onwards, it's a base 9-inch Contagion range, and he extends his to 12 inches. So he's going probably 23 inches from wherever he's embarked into in a Rhino. He can afflict enemies. And then when you afflict them, you can 6-inch Deep Strike off those enemies with the Death Shroud Terminators. So you can actually use him to deliver the Death Shroud, which is pretty neat. Plus you get like a little guy who's okay at fighting, and maybe he's with 5 Plague Marines and he makes them hard to shoot at. I think that's cute, actually. The Icon guy used to do a similar thing. You know better? Or is he just like a different dude? No, he just gives plus 1 OC. Yeah, he's not as good. He used to, I think, give himself a 12-inch aura once per game, but that was index rules, and I think that's gone now. So the Lord of Contagion, or the Lord of Poxes, we can actually use to get those Death Shroud Terminators into the fight if your opponent isn't giving you good ways to sort of get them in there. Obviously, you can use Contagions off the forward operators, so like Poxwalkers and Chaos Spawn can Contagion your opponent to get those Terminators in early, but if they're not giving it to you, you could just use that guy to run in and do it by himself. So that's actually cool. One of the first times we've actually seen that guy unironically played. And then we have a Tallyman to hold down the back line. So not as much shooting as we typically see, but it does control the middle of the table much better, which I think helps in, again, those matchups where your opponent's just trying to stat check you. We've got World Eaters. Vex, you came in 4th. Congratulations. That's great. 4th out of 16 is pretty respectable. Oops, excuse me. World Eaters from the same team running Berserker Warband, I assume. Yep. It doesn't actually say. Oh, there it goes. But it's how Brazen Ire, Berserker Glaive, favorite of Khorne. This looks pretty standard. Yeah, it's double Slaughterbound. Oh, that's cool. So we have Karn with 10 Berserkers, a favorite of Khorne Slaughterbound, and a Berserker Glaive Slaughterbound. I almost wonder if you rock the favorite Slaughterbound by himself and he just hides for the start of the game and then late games. The Berserker Glaive Slaughterbound hits like a truck. I'm actually always interested. It's a little tough because Slaughterbound they're move 10 infantry, right? They are a little expensive to just throw into things, and they're a little inconsistent because it's 85 points plus enhancements. And they don't have any rerolls or anything, so they just like hit on 2s and wound on 2s or 3s on most things. However, they attack so many times that even if you're not leading a unit, a lot of times they just kill whatever they charge, and especially in Berserker Warband. So his base profile goes to 10 attacks at strength 10, devastating. If you add Berserker Glaive, he gets additional attack and damage. So he goes 11 attacks, strength 11. 11 attacks, strength 10, AP 2, damage 3, devastating. So this guy can basically just like one for one, whatever, by himself. You don't need to throw away an entire 8-pound unit. You just need to throw away that one guy. Plus, he might also explode when you kill him, which is always kind of fun when that happens. So he's like a little nuclear missile. The second Slaughterbound having the reroll enhancement's pretty interesting, but we could just play him KG and then he late games, and maybe he hangs out with the 8-pound. I don't know. Then we're running a bunch of 8-pound Jackals, 3 units of 3 Chaos Spawn, 2 Forge Friends, a Mauler Fiend, Chaos Rhino. Yeah, pretty normal stuff, I think, beyond that. The Forge Fiends definitely, I think, introduce some interesting differences in a team format because they answer like very particular profiles incredibly effectively. If you're like T9 vehicle or mass heavy infantry, like mass terminators or something, you super don't want to see World Eaters Force Fiends across the table. A lot of other armies will just eat them and it's fine. Like, whatever. You could shoot me and it'll be strength 10, you win on 5s, like whatever. I'll just eat it. But if you're like the T5 heavy infantry army that runs like 5 to 10 models in a unit and triggers blast off the Forge Friends, super doesn't want to see this build because not only does it have a lot of multi-damage melee already that's good against infantry, but you also just sweep with Forge Fiends. Forge Fiend on Overwatch kills like 3 or 4 Terminators. If you ever let them shoot normally, it gets even worse. And then we have Genestealer Cults. Looks like a Host of Ascension. Looks like normal Host of Ascension stuff, which I think is phenomenal in a team format. This army wins a lot of like interesting matchups, and I think probably post Knight nerf, I imagine that this army will actually beat Knights fairly consistently. Because in the past, it was very close. They were kind of like statistically advantaged against them, but it got really weird because if Knights just like were able to push them off objectives and screen them so they couldn't get back on objectives, the Knights like could just outscore really quickly. They had a tough time actually killing all the Genestealer cultists, but that didn't end up mattering sort of towards the end of the game. If they could just clear enough GSE models to then constantly take objectives and keep them off primary, then things were bad. But now that Knights have significantly less stuff, I actually think that this army probably just rolls them. You're like probably rocking the armature builds, and I think this army is basically +1 to win against armatures, like with most of its weapons, because most of its weapons, that's just the math. I guess that's not necessarily true. Like the lasers are all winning on 3s. The cannons I think are 5s either way, and then everything else is like 6s. I guess it's the grenade launchers that change, so they're a little bit better against armatures, but they can clear armatures, right? And then you're left with like 1 or 2 Knights, and then it all looks kind of bad. Plus, they're also a skew themselves because they're a huge horde. So you need particular matchups in order to deal with them too. And have the Slaughterbound fight on death for a command point. How about fight on death in Berserker Warband? I just shoot them. I don't know. Do they? You can make them fight on death with the Blessing of Corn. But I don't think they fight on death normally. Unless I'm missing something. Yeah, with the Corn Blessing for sure. Yeah. Which is crazy. Yeah, I remember I played with it was the upgraded sword from what's the other detachment? Corn Demonkin, the one that didn't see play until it did. And I triggered a fight on death with that guy. He killed an entire unit of custodians. Custodian guard just murdered the whole thing. I was like, whoa! Actually equalized the game. I was losing, and he basically brought it back for me because he fought on death and killed the whole unit. It was crazy because of his once per game ability. If he charges into a unit and doesn't kill it and gets killed back, or excuse me, if he charges into a unit and kills it, or if he fails his charge, he hasn't used his once per game yet. When your opponent charges you, you can still declare the once per game at the start of the fight phase, and then when he dies, he gets the bonus. He won't get to fight if he's already fought that phase, or if your opponent interrupts into him and he dies when having used it and he got the bonus. I think in that particular situation, he had it active because he had declared like a 6-inch charge and then failed it. It was like a 6-inch rerollable. I failed it, and I was like, "Fuck, this sucks." But then my opponent charged him back, and I was like, "I'll declare his fight on his ability just in case I fight on death," and it worked. He killed everyone. It was awesome. Felt so good. All right, and then we talked briefly about this Chaos Demons list. Let's take a peek at that again. Oh shit, we are stat checking a little bit here. We're back to the OG kind of Knights-esque stuff. This is an incursion running 3 great unclean ones. Wow. Okay. Interesting. What a wild list. So it's Rodigus, who's phenomenal. He messes with your opponent's OC. So Rodigus is like, he just scores you primary, is basically his whole deal. You put him in your army for 250 points and he scores you 25 on primary. Almost like he just holds your expansion and your opponent can't contest it with you know, little stuff, right? And we're talking about that like creations of Bile list. They throw 5 chosen onto the objective and you're like, well, it's OC0, so he'll just hold it. And you'll charge him. You almost certainly won't kill him because he's toughness 13 next to a great unclean one. You'll do a bunch of damage. He'll kill you, and then I'll be like, that's it. He's just vibing. He oftentimes, even if you're OC2, his Overwatch is so strong that sometimes you can put 5 OC or even, 6 or 7 models on it, and he'll just kill enough of them and he'll hold the objective anyway. He's incredibly good at holding down primary. We have an Exalted Flamer, Endless Gift Guy, old ad over there, plus a another Great Unclean one, plus a Rendmaster with Argath, King of Blades. So that gives the Rendmaster plus 2 attacks and strength while he's in shadow. He does have to worry about the in shadow part of it, but he's definitely the best place to put this relic outside of a Bloodthirster. He doesn't get the permanent Shadow of Chaos because he's not a Greater Demon. So to get the full effect of the enhancement, he has to be actually within someone's shadow. That's a little bit tough because there's no Khorne Demon, there's no Khorne Greater Demons in this list. However, with 3 Great and Clean ones, I think the hope is that you're just taking primary, and then when he's fighting, you're on primary anyway, so it's fine. So he goes to, once he's in shadow, 7 attacks at base strength 8, and 4 more attacks at base strength 6. All of those are AP 2. The big sword's 3 damage, the little sword's 2 damage. Once he points his buff, that goes to 7 attacks at strength 9 AP 3 4 damage, and 4 attacks at strength 7 AP 2 3, or excuse me, AP 3 3 damage. His output is actually crazy. He is expensive, and he is hard to maneuver because he's only movement 8, and he's kind of a slow boy. However, he hits like a truck with that enhancement on. Probably an underplayed unit if I had to guess. If you're playing other Khorne stuff, he goes crazy. But it's like the sort of delivery is the tough part. He also gains wound rerolls against character or monster units, which in a situation where you're looking at fighting knights is phenomenal because he's wounding big knights on 5's full rerolls with 11 multi-damage attacks, 11 3+ damage attacks, which has a pretty good shot at just like half killing a big knight or even totaling it. If they are a character. If he goes into Helverins, his stats are probably good enough to kill them, but it's much dicier. He also regenerates wounds after he kills characters, which is cute. So then we're running 10 Plague Bearers for obsecking the home objective, 6 Flamers to hang out with the Exalted Flamer. A little bit of a, I imagine just like an infantry sweeper option there. They also get advance and shoot with the Exalted Flamer, and they shoot, that would be 8d6 shots, I think, in total. So they're a good Overwatch threat, and they're good for clearing sort of light infantry. Not good for much else, though, unless you use Draft of Terror, because they're only AP1. So a lot of times they bounce off medium stuff, which is a little bit frustrating. Like this whole unit will kill 4 Space Marines out of 5 and not even wipe a unit. We then have 2 units of 6 Blood Crushers, excuse me. So high OC, sort of aggressive mounted units that we can use Demonic Incursion to 6-inch Deep Strike and then push them in. And then we can buff them with the Rendmaster to do some crazy damage. 3 Beasts of Nurgle to hold down the midboard, plus Fleshhound unit. That's an interesting list. No Be'lakor, no Skarbrand, none of the more traditional options, but very good at holding down holding down objectives to the point that you're probably going to 10-10 the game, I think, is trying to stall out this list. Votann slap Rodriguez. Yeah, I mean he's not super hard to kill, but the thing is that like you have to get them to the point where they attack him, and that can be tough if he's just holding his backline, right? If he's just like holding his expansion, so he's sort of in the middle, but you have to deal with Ed, and you have to deal with 12 Blood Crushers. he's the least of your priorities. So like you're like, yeah, my super dedicated anti-tank will kill the big tank, and you're like, yeah, of course it will. But the goal is that you have to deal with all of the other tanks first. And Rodriguez is so difficult for your utility to interact with that he won't lose the objective while that's happening, and that's the real benefit of him. Like you can't put the 5 jump back assault intercessors to contest his objective. It just doesn't work, right? You can't put 5 OC2 infantry over there because he'll just kill one of them and then take the objective back anyway. Which is why he's so cool. Problem is, so many things slap Catan. They're unironically slower than Great and Clean ones. It's true. The other weird thing is that Rodriguez has a weird interaction with Catan shards because he has a bonus damage effect. He chooses something at the start of the phase and then gives all Nurgle stuff +1 damage against it, start of the fight phase. And so when you sweep with your Great Unclean ones, or even if you overhead swing, the bonus damage is calculated after their damage having effect. So even if you have a 1 damage attack, let's say Plague Bearer stabs a Catan shard with his little knife, and he rolls a 6 to hit, and it's lethal. The Catan Shard fails its save. He goes, your 2 damage will half down to 1. And the Plague Bearer goes, no. That's not how that works. You'll half 1 to a minimum of 1. So you'll take 1 plus 1 bonus damage. So you actually still take 2. So even though, like, you know, Rodigus will get stabbed to death by those guys, in that particular matchup, Rodigus actually has crazy utility because he can... What? Camera just freeze? Oh, it did. Cool. Thanks, camera. You're the best. Let me fix this bad boy. Rodigus still has crazy utility because he's still going to be able to sort of accrue value. Come on, buddy. There he goes. Nice. What a Chad. Which is kind of funny. So sometimes you sweep for 1,000,000 1 damage attacks off a Great Unclean One, and then Rodigus is like, no, it's 2 damage, and it stays at 2 damage, even if you have it. Take that. And then the Catan Shard has a little cry to itself, cries itself to sleep. So that's the Canadian Team Championship. I want to take a peek at the Glasshammer teams as well, because it looks like, first of all, we have a crazy sort of dream team of super powerful UKTC players, but also pretty weird sort of composition of armies here. He does right. The key is that he doesn't replace the damage characteristic. If he increased damage 1 to damage 2, right? If he said damage 1 weapons become damage 2, they would get halved back to 1. But because he adds +1, you always this is probably worth a video actually, because I've talked about this in the past. You always calculate characteristic modifiers in 40k using PEMDAS. So multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So you a half damage effect is a division effect, so it happens step 2. Then you do addition, subtraction, which is why it works like that. Which is cool. There's a little math lesson for you. I'm not good at math, but I know that one. Same goes for Melta. If you shoot a Melta gun at a Catan Shard and you're in Melta range, the Catan Shard halves your D6 value that you roll for the damage, then you add +2. So Melta weapons is actually really good against Catan. It feels like they shouldn't be, because like low volume, high impact damage is exactly what Catan Shards are supposed to be defensive against. But Melta in particular, because of how it works mechanically, is actually really good. It's funny. You shoot like a Catan Shard with a thermal cannon, and a couple of those go through, and that thing just vaporizes. They're like, but I'm having damage, and you're like, take 9 anyway. Pretty wild. It's extra funny because in 5th edition, you want a little history lesson, chat? In 5th edition, OG 40k, Catan actually could take an ability that prevented them from taking Melta damage. They just didn't take damage from Meltas and Flamers. They were a Lord of Fire. They were forged in the heart of a sun. You could not hurt them with heat-based weaponry. That was the actual rule. Warhammer 40k used to be a role-playing game, chat. It was any heat weapon could not damage them. Very silly. Incredibly silly. All right. Let's talk about Glasshammer team. So War Masters won with a bunch of OGs. Danny Evison, Raphael Harbinson, Matt Bell, Skauki, Jack Tite, as well as Fucci. If you let's see, Skauki is C5SU season 2 champion, and Fucci was season 3 runner-up, I believe. He was grand finalist. He lost to Ash in the finals. I think that was season 3. He lost to Ash in the finals, and I think that was one of the best games that we've had in a finals game. We have not had a T5SU Invitational since then. Not early 9th edition Invitationals were fucking wild, dude. They were crazy good. But these are like OG players on the T5SU, on the TacticalTortoise circuit over here, which is pretty cool. Thank Matt Ward for that. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's baked into the core of the design ethos. That's why things have a ballistic skill characteristic. It used to be that your model had a ballistic skill characteristic. It was like a dexterity stat in D&D, where it's like, well, I'm +3 for ranged weapons because of my dexterity stat. That's why everybody had a ballistic skill, and then regardless of what weapon you gave them, they would use their core skill, right, to use that weapon. Same with like attacks and strength. Everything was based off of your datasheet ability because it was literally just a role-playing game. Rogue Trader 40K, the first edition of 40K, required a game master. Was it actually just an RPG, but you played with squads of guys instead of one character? It has how much things have changed. Should we go back? No, we're much better off now, I think. But it is funny that they're still, those kind of like old design ethos is still, you can find them occasionally. They're in there somewhere. All right. So we have Chaos Knights in this one. Excuse me. With some despoiler Gatling cannons, triple despoilers, double carnivore, double stalker, Nurgling Gerontigus. What a phenomenally horrifying army. So it's 4 high OC war dogs. Rotigus, who again we just talked about, is pretty tanky and also is impossible to interact with on objectives. Backed up by triple despoiler shooting. Now, all the despoilers here, we are in Infernal Lands, so we can ignore cover with them, which is good. We also get sustained hits on the big guns. These guys are like, this is going to be a really good sort of medium to heavy infantry sweeping sort of build, right? So you're worried about mass 2 wound infantry, like mass high resilience infantry, and you dump 72 despoiler Gatling cannon shots on them, and they go away. They're gone. We've answered them. And then it's also just good at scoring as well on top of that. So pretty straightforward. You love to see it. Necrons, another kind of good army that can zero things out, especially Awakened Dynasty. Very few armies have like what it takes particularly to profitably engage into Awakened Dynasty. They boil every matchup down to a scrum. We're running double Royal Wardens. One of them has another Realm Casket, an Ajax Durable Bond, and a Scorpic Lord, plus double Scorpic Lords. Imotech the Stormlord, Orican the Diviner. So we do have almost certainly have at least one Warrior Brick. Illuminar Ceres, Chronomancer, Catacomb Command Barge. So we, oh my god. This army's going to take every objective. So Catacomb Command Barge, Broadcast, and Aura, plus 1 OC. We then have two fall back and shoot Necron Warrior squads. One of them has stealth. One of them has a 4+ invulnerable save. Whether or not they're stacked on top of each other, I don't know. You get all the bonuses from Illuminar Ceres in them, so they get Armor of Contempt permanently and +1 AP if he's near them. You string back to them. So these Necron Warrior bricks become OC3. And then have a bunch of reactive reanimates they can do. Plus a Canoptic Reanimator too, to keep them alive. Cryptothralls. 2 units of Cryptothralls. There is only... Oh, there's a Chronomancer. Oh, of course. Excuse me, chat. Oh my god. All right, I just totally missed that. So both of the Warrior bricks also have Cryptothralls for 4 extra wounds. One of them can up down with Veil of Darkness and then shoot and scoot. So they could put OC3 onto your objectives if you don't screen out at least 5 inches off the objective control area. What an insane troll. Plus, many armies cannot kill the first Necron Warrior unit. It's not even worth trying because they reanimate so much, right? They're a 4+ save with AOC, potentially in cover, with Cryptothralls and reactive reanimates, -1 to be hit, and a 4+ invulnerable save. Once you kill most of them, they just start coming back, and they'll string back to try to pull them out of your line of sight. So most armies can't kill the first Necron Warrior unit. Now imagine my surprise after I commit my entire army to kill 1 Necron Warrior unit. I get charged by Scorpic Destroyers and die, and then the second Necron Warrior unit replaces them with Veil of Darkness. Absolutely disgusting. Also, you have the 1 Gauss player in there so you can make sure they can shoot to trigger the Chronomancer's ability. Oh my god, that's a team's list if I ever did see one, chat. Can you kill 40 reanimated Necron Warriors with a million OC? Yes, no. If no, windmill slam the matchup. Incredible. It's all in. Doomsday Arcs, we don't need them. The Silent King, what a chump. But an absolute chump. It is all 40 Necron warriors. Oh, man. That's amazing. That's amazing. Is that 108 Gatling shots? Because one of those, talking about the Chaos Knights list, one of those knights is a Battle Cannon Knight. So it's actually potentially more of the Battle Cannons, like tune up into something that they really want to shoot at. That's a wild list. What an insane skew. Raphael over here. Running infinite infinite jump pack infantry. It's Liberator assault group, triple jump assault intercessors, 20 Death Company Marines. So we have Lamarty's, and I guess just a Death Company captain. That's interesting. A lot of times you see like a couple of the captains just to like bounce mortal wounds onto people. And they're really good, like little like trading units with the Death Company, 5 Death Company Marines. It's very rare you see 10 with Speed of the Primarch. I'm curious about that. I guess like it's pretty consistent that you'll deliver Speed of the Primarch, and because those guys are like full rerolls and have a bunch of critical effects, you don't really need them to charge to get a lot of damage through, so that you'll probably get value out of it. I don't know if I don't think I've ever seen the second brick of 10. Plus Mephiston, plus Bloodshed Captain with Rage for the Warrior. Yeah. Otherwise, pretty standard stuff. Just a bunch of aggressive dudes. 1 Assault Intercessor squad for the captain, an Intercessor squad for the backline, bunch of utility, hammer blow units, an Incursor squad so we can oath melee stuff and then buff the guns of the Incursors. Sanguinary Guard for Dante. We have Dante, right? Yep. Commander Dante, plus a Scout Squad and a Calidus Assassin. I guess there isn't that many guns. We're just scouting with these guys. They're just harder to kill scouts with a Haywire Mine. Fair enough. You like it. You like to see it. So that's a little bit more normal. The 20 Death Company Marines is a little bit interesting. Fushini running Combined Arms. So again, a little bit more standard. Double Rogaldorn. Shock Troopers, Jungle Fighter, Death Corps. Chimera. So we have a million Scouting Chimeras. Back that up with Bulgrin. Or I guess Scouting Chimera is probably with the Kasrkin for the Alpha Strike. And then that's it. And then Rogaldorn Commanders to sort of shore up the back line. Plus you have the 20 Death Corps of Krieg who can ensure that you get bottom 5 scoring just by putting 30 OC onto objectives everywhere. No Gaunt's Ghosts, but I guess we don't need them. If all we're doing is just issuing orders on board. So I guess now the one interesting inclusion here is Emperor's Children, I think, because Emperor's Children are right now, in my opinion, not particularly strong in a singles format because they have such skewy matchups right now. They're really good into high volume enemies. They have a tough time fighting high resilience stuff. So the stuff they can't trigger coterie off of very easily, they have a tough time with. Now, if you have a bunch of utility and they can pledge up early, they're going to do okay because their output goes through the roof. But if you don't have anything for them to prey on in the early game, and they're just trying to like bounce kind of mediocre profiles into really high toughness and wounds counts, they're gonna have a really tough time there, and they're probably gonna struggle. So if you're able to dodge those matchups, Emperor's Children actually go pretty far, which is why they're a little bit better in the team format. Simply because you can try to get them into armies like, like your Astra Militarum, like your to a lesser extent, I guess Genestealer cults, where they're just gonna like impact the unit, one tap it, kill all their characters, and then generate 1 million pledge points and get all their buffs active, and then one Winged Demon Prince kills their whole army at the end of the game. So it's triple Lord Exultants for the early game trading. 2 Demon Princes of Slaanesh. One of them is Pledge of Mortal Pain, which is kind of cute. So 15-point enhancement. It can do D3 mortal wounds. Or excuse me, 3 mortal wounds if you fail a leadership check within 12 inches, start your shooting phase. Cute, I guess. It's kind of interesting. Lucius the Eternal to eat the Warlord damage. 1 Lord Cacophonous is Pledge of Unholy Fortune, so you can flip your Blastmaster shots into automatic sustains. A lot of times you're shooting Hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. So you probably like get 1, 2, you flip the 2 to a 6, and you generate essentially 2 additional Blastmaster hits with that. Very good against like medium vehicles, T9 stuff. Infractors times 3. Tormentors times 2 for utility. Rhinos to carry the Infractors around, and then replace them with Noise Marines. Yeah, so otherwise it's relatively standard. Coterie of the Conceited. There is no respawn guy, but respawn guy is a little bit shaky anyway. Played an Emperor's Children yesterday. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really cool army. I kind of like how just like wantonly abandoned you have to play. You basically just have to play super aggressively and try to just swarm your opponent with lots of these little idiots everywhere, all these little Lord Exultant units, all these Demon Princes. Because if you don't, they're just going to attrition you down, and you're not going to get value out of Coterie of the Conceited. But if you threat overload them and just hand them like 2 Lord Exultants and 2 Demon Princes and all your Noise Marines, most armies can't deal with all of them at the same time, and you just get 2 turns of triggering all your Coterie buffs, and then late game the Winged Demon Princes go absolutely crazy. Like this guy's gonna potentially ping you for 3, charge you, ping you for 6, and then swing. It's like 6 attacks, reroll once to hit and wound critical, 5 up lethal sustain. So even though he's only strength 8 AP2, right? He's probably getting like 3-ish criticals with the reroll involved. So, and sometimes you even put Unholy Fortune on him. It makes your shooting way worse, but your one late game Demon Prince goes crazy. So he can like basically hand you 3 lethals and then roll 9, like 5 ups to wound. So he hands you 3 more saves. So that's like 6 AP2 3 damage saves plus 9 mortal wounds. If on a good day, right? If he rolls out well, which is it's a lot of damage. I think the most impressive thing I did with a Demon Prince one time was I hit a 20 model Militarum command squad. It was the full brick of 20 Cadian shock troopers plus command squad, and I believe it also had Ursula Creed in them. And by himself, once all the Coterie buffs were active, he was reroll once to hit and wound, hitting on 2s, winning on 2s with a sweep, and he was like critical 5 ups, lethal sustain. So he killed 6 on impact, swept 14 times. You get about 5 to 6 additional, 5 to 6 like lethal and sustains. You probably convert all your wounds anyway. So you hand them somewhere around 20 saves. And so if you spike even a little bit, and I think he shot them with his gun as too. So I think this one Demon Prince basically killed. My opponent's saves were pretty good. He left Ursula alive on like 1. Was when the smoke cleared. It was crazy. It blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute. Wait. This is insane. Yeah, it's crazy. Once he goes active, once they turn on all the way, it's wild. But you have to get to that point, so you need a matchup that allows you to do that. Just why they're good in teams. That's the whole reason. Yeah, but it's kind of a fun army because you have to some extent, you just have to assume, like, you have to accept that at some point you're like, if I can survive to the late game, I'm gonna do crazy. I'm gonna have some absolutely insane stuff happen. I just need to like white knuckle through and get there. And sometimes that can be hard. For one, I'm a huge doomer when it comes to Warhammer 40k. So if I have a bad turn, I'm like, it's fucking over. I'm gonna die. And sometimes you have to play those armies where you have to think back to every game you play with them and be like, it's okay. If I just hold on, I'll be fine. Chaos Demons were like that in 9th edition. I think Chaos Demons, they were the most infuriating army to play because it was so random how well you did. Everything was a 4+. All your army could only be hit on a 4+. They could save on a 4+. Everything was wounded on a 4+. You had stuff that went off on a 4+, and you were just like, I just have to cross my fingers. And I understand that the math of the game says that if we roll enough 4+, eventually I will win. But early game, it could feel really bad because your opponent kills you. Then the math swings back, and towards the end of the game, they have trouble actually getting through your army because it's so random whether or not anything happens. And it feels a lot like that, where a lot of times you would just have Be'lakor like stabbing your opponent's entire army to death because the fickle like waves of the warp went the other direction, and he didn't die instead of dying. Which happened earlier in the game where you're the other Greater Demon side. It was really wild. And Emperor's Children feels like that a lot of times. You're like, oh man, my opponent's killing so much of my stuff. But then you look at your pledge count and you're like, but the rest of my guys, the stuff that lived, hits so hard that it's fine. We're just going to equalize attrition right now with like 2 unit champions and a Lord Exultant. Like they're about to go kill 3 times their points value. Let's go. It's crazy. What a wild army. It's super fun. Emperor's Children can have trouble getting to important units if you screen them out. Then they just die on the crackback. Yeah, the problem is that screens feed their buffs though. So like that's why Noise Marines are important, because oftentimes they can clear screens without committing and generate you, like without fully committing, right? They'll like peak line of sight and make it so that you can shoot them back with one thing, but you probably won't kill them. Like that's the platonic ideal. You're like, I'll move block you. And you're like, okay, I'm going to stand my Noise Marine behind a ruin, draw a line of sight to one dude, and vaporize that whole unit, right? I'm going to gain my pledge point for the turn, and I'm going to pass back to you. And so they'll generate value off of those armies where you screen them really heavily. If you just push them and they live in their deployments on the whole game, yeah, of course. Every army's going to lose to that. But so the spookiest part is if like your opponent just doesn't commit into you as an Emperor's Children player. If you're not in a position to like tormentor all the midboard objectives and pressure them on score, and your opponent's just like, I'll vibe, like I'll hang out, come into me first. The Emperor's Children player is like, fuck. Now I have to make like awkward charges with Lord Exultants, and if I fail, I lose a 200-point unit, like or 160 or whatever. But a lot of times, like if you can send in a Lord Exultant and you get good value out of it, right? You kill, let's say like the Infractors kill a screening unit, like a 10-man light infantry squad. And then the Lord Exultant kills like a transport, and you gain 2 pledge points from it. An Emperor's Children player is going to take that trade every single time, literally every time, even if it's a trade down in points. The whole goal is to get them to a situation where their characters, Lucius, the Demon Princes, maybe a Lord Exultant, the Lord Cacophonist, at the end of the game have all their pledge points. They will trade their whole army to get to that game state. Even if you feel like you're like, I have a million guys and I played the board control game perfectly, but they still have all their characters and they have 7 pledge points, the game's over. You're probably going to die. It feels really weird. What do we think about using an Imperial Fist attachment with your blue Ultramarines? Color scheme doesn't matter. Paint your armies whatever color you want. That is purely aesthetic choice for you. More power to you if your army's painted and it looks nice. The particular scheme that you have used to paint your miniatures does not change their mechanical presence on the table whatsoever. You play whatever detachment you like. Somebody just posted an Ultramarine Vulcan Heston in in the Discord actually the other day. I think it was this morning. They just got the new Vulcan Heston. They're like, I'm playing Forge Fathers Chosen or whatever, Forge Father Seekers in Ultramarines, like with my Ultramarine army. Cool, man. That's cool. Just now you have the Salamander keyword and you can't take Marnius Calgar. That's the only difference. Feel dirty doing it? We shouldn't. One of the benefits of Space Marines is that if you are willing to invest in the army, you can play any army. You can play melee, you can play range, you can play MSU, you can play big bricks, you can play Terminators, you can play close combat, you can play long range stuff, you can play vehicles, you can play light infantry. Like the benefit of Space Marines, you can play anything. That's one of the benefits of the army. Sometimes you'll find that Space Marines don't do very well because they're jack of all trades, and a lot of their stable is so broad. That's just one of the sort of design spaces that they occupy. I would not feel bad about playing different stuff with your Space Marines. That's one of the reasons that the army exists. So you can have a single army where you can experiment with different playstyles. All right, so let's talk about. I want to talk about the North Wales Team Championship. This one also had Chaos Knights. Interesting that it seems like players or teams are gravitating towards Knights builds or Chaos Knights builds rather than Imperial Knights. And I think it's because of this. I think it's because we get this particular answer where a lot of there's a lot of armies that very specifically just die to like hyper high volume mid-range attacks, right? And Knight Despoiler, so Chaos Knights not only bring you the Knight skew, so you're a stat check your opponent has to deal with, but they also can answer a lot of armies simply because they are throwing so many attacks at them. And the triple Despoiler lists, I think, are great for that. I would be upset about it if I didn't think that rolling Despoiler attacks was so fun. I just love rolling a million 2 damage attacks. It's incredibly enjoyable. We have a pint of lager. Because it's Liberator Assault Group. I get it. Blood Engine Captain with Rangefield Warrior. Captain with Jump Pack with Speed of the Primarch. Jump Pack Captain with Gift of Foresight. Plus a Jump Chaplain. Commander Dante Lamartis. We have double Foot Assault Intercessor squads. Is this the army we talked about previously? No, it's only one Jump Captain. So there's just a regular Assault Intercessor squad just hanging out. We have two JPI. Okay, see, this is the old technology that we saw a couple weeks ago. Sort of be picked up. Is people running lots of these little units of Death Company. Don't know. Does the chaplain join them? It feels like he should be able to, but I actually have no idea. Death Company with Jump Pack. No, Death Company Marines. Yeah, they can. Interesting. If a chaplain could be attached to Jump Intercessors, it can attach into Jump Death Company instead. So we can take the chaplain and put him into the Death Company squad. You get a 194 point unit. They get +1 to wound on their billion Power Fist attacks. They have Eviscerator, which is a Power Fist in all but name. The 1 less attack, 1 less weapon skill, but sustain. Plus another, a couple more Power Fists. All with +1 to wound, +2 strength, +1 attack from the detachment ability. He has Gift of Foresight, which I think is a flip. Actually, I've never seen that before. The chaplain joining the Death Company unit. That's cool. Yeah, he has a flip for himself, but I don't think it does anything cool. I think it just vibes. If they have a captain, they get sustained hits, but otherwise they don't have any natural. He doesn't have any natural critical effects. So the Gift of Foresight just to like ensure that he gets a wound roll through, I guess, or a saving throw. Interesting. Plus Lamartis. So we have one bare bones Death Company squad with no attachment, one with a chaplain, one with one with Lamartis. The big 10-man with Lamartis, almost certainly. We have Infiltrator squad, double Sanguinary Guard, so that's where the Jump Captain goes, and then a Stern Guard Veteran squad for the Blood Angels Captain. So the Foot Assault Intercessors are just utility, I imagine. Because the Stern Guard Veteran squad will give the Ragefield Warrior guy full rerolls when he attacks the Oath of Moment target anyway. So you don't need the Assault Intercessors for him. They're actually a little bit less consistent. And they're just good because you can give them Advance and Charge, and they have a bunch of attacks that reroll. Kind of feels like Jump Pack Assault Intercessors from Wish. They don't do mortal wounds on the charge, but they have more effective attacks because they reroll, I guess. But they're slower. So we have to use like the Impulsor to deliver them, I suppose. Before you fill it with the Stern Guard Veterans. That's interesting. Not often you see that many foot units in foot models in Liberator Assault Group. But it was probably a situation where it's like I could get one Scout squad maybe and a JPI squad, or I could just take the double Foot Assault Intercessors and call it a day and have just more damage output, which I guess makes more sense. It's old texture, but it checks out, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like we saw that Death Company captain, because Because it used to be that you would take like 2 Death Company captains plus Lamartis plus 2 units of like 30 or 20 jump back Death Company, 2 units of 5 plus 1 unit of 10. You'd put the 2 Death Company captains into the 2 units of 5, and then Lamartis go into the 10, and then you'd have basically the big anvil of Lamartis unit with -1 damage, and then the 2 little squads that could range out and trade on objectives, and they get full hit rerolls because they're Death Company, plus they give sustained hits. So the unit itself is pretty effective, and having a character inside gives them their OC characteristic back, so they don't need to be near a chaplain to gain the 1 OC to steal objectives. Wonder if the balance site is waiting for the Imperial Knight Codex. I would be surprised if we see any changes to what Imperial Knights look like in the balance Dataslate, I think. That would legitimately shock me. In the past, we have seen changes like this, where they get released and they like sort of pre-point them, and then they just release at either book points or what they had previously. I almost guarantee that the book points update is the update we got to like a week and a half ago or whatever, 2 weeks ago at this point. And I don't think we're going to see any new points values for this army when it comes out, and I'm worried because it does look really good. I'm already a little like tired of getting fucking shot through buildings with the stupid towering rule, but we'll see. I think you could probably make knights work without the towering rule because they can go through walls now. I don't want to talk about this too much, but because you can go through walls now, you don't need as much maneuverability to gain line of sight to things, and because you'll just go to the other side of a building. And so, right, in many situations, it's impossible to hide from them, which is, I don't think, what you want. Back when they had to go around buildings and stuff, it was a little bit more reasonable. But now that they move through walls thing plus towering, it's too much board control, I think. That's my opinion anyway. We'll see how things end up, especially with movement bonuses, because it looks like the entire faction is just go faster all the time. Go faster. Touch new terrain things to shoot through them. I love that for me. That's my favorite. Letting go through buildings was an awful game balance decision. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that the faction gets hamstrung too much by buildings. I think the problem is that GW doesn't know how to write functional terrain rules, and they don't know how to make line of sight blocking terrain that doesn't also impede movement. Even though they did it in 9th edition, nobody took advantage of it, so they removed it for 10th. And if you make line of sight blocking stuff that your army can move through, it's actually fine. I even made a video in 9th edition about this terrain feature that the Canadian circuit used, I think. And it was a building with a big door in it. And it was it's a ruin. So you can't see through it because it's a ruin. It has the obscuring keyword, but you can walk through the door. I was like, it's perfect. It's the perfect terrain feature. It blocks line of sight, but you can still move through. And it couldn't move knights through, but you could move dreadnoughts and tanks, basically. Up to predators, I think, basically, you could go through it. And I was like, just do more of that. Just, flat terrain features that still had movement available through them. And GW was like, no. Only walls. What the fuck? What the fuck, Workshop? Figure out your shit. It's so stupid. It would even be easier to build terrain, too. If you were I don't know, here's a scatter terrain feature that blocks line of sight. Is it thematic? Not particularly. Make it a forest, whatever. But let knights move through it. It would be, and then you don't have to have the move through walls thing. I don't know. It's whatever. Pro Mess. You're a relatively new player that wants to play something fairly elite that is relatively friendly. Always liked mixed range and melee from other more tabletop war games, which faction would suggest and is melee viable. But melee is very viable for sure. Fairly elite and flexible. Sounds like a Space Marines to me. They are by definition the jack of all trades. They're able to build any variety, but they have very good long range anti-tank shooting, and they have solid melee. So I would say Space Marines. If you want to go harder into elites, you could do Custodes. Their shooting's not as good, but their melee is much better. And they are much lower model count. So Marines tend to be like, I don't know, you're playing 30-ish models, 30, 40 models maybe. Custodes is like 20 to 30 on a good day, maybe you have 30, and many of them are Sisters of Silence. So, but only a couple of tanks with big guns on them. Basically, the Caladius Grav tanks are the shooting for that army. Can Codex Knights reactive move through walls? I don't remember off the top of my head. I think so. I think that the Knight Super Heavy Walker movement goes through things with normal moves. Yeah, it's each time you make a normal advance or fallback move and go through walls. The only thing they can't do is charge through walls. Do I do personal risk reviews? Yeah, for $5 super chat. I will look at your list. Let's keep talking about this Necron army though. So we're back to sort of normal Necrons. It looks like it's a Starshatter arsenal this time around. So still relatively skewy, but this would be a list you would see at a normal event. It's not necessarily 100% all team stuff where you just have a million sort of Necron warriors. It's a Catacomb Command Barge with Dread Majesty for rerolls. Scorpic Lord with Chrono Impedance. I don't believe that there are Scorpics. There are not. But oftentimes you just take this guy because he's harder to kill than other Chrono Impedance field carriers. You don't necessarily want to staple the Technomancer to the Silent Kings, but however, so you want to, on an independent character, you can put it on a Hexmark Destroyer, but the character has to get so close to the enemy to continuously apply Chrono Impedance fields that he oftentimes gets shot regardless of lone operative, and so his kind of poor defensive profile hurts there. So we take the Scorpic Lord because he's hard to kill. That's the only reason. To give -1 damage to the Silent King. 2 Technomancers to go into Canoptic Wraith squads, Silent King, Reanimator, Spiders, double Canoptic Wraiths, double Doomsday Arc, double Flayed Ones, 1 Locust Destroyer for utility. Normal stuff. I think I would not be surprised to see this in a singles event. Just vibing. Seems fine. Hope TOs are pretty quick in handling the Knight Codex. I don't know what TOs are supposed to do about it. Just ban it? I don't know. It sucks because we're in a golden age right now. We're about to have like 3 glorious weeks of a perfect metagame where we have to deal with a little bit of Eldar and maybe some Thousand Sons, and then everyone else is viable. And then we're probably about to get fucking dumpstered. It's gonna be bad. I don't know. Somebody was telling me they heard rumors of Necrons getting buffed too, and I was like, really? They're like perfect right now. Why are we buffing them? I don't know. We'll see. Kev Hughes running Leagues of Votann, a Brandfast Oathband. I'm interested to hear what people have to say about this attachment because I have a suspicion that it's gonna get clarified, and I almost wonder if it's gonna get overcorrected because we haven't had any Votann FAQs yet. And Brandfast Oathband, for those who don't know, it's got some cool transports like synergy. You can reactive fire transports when you shoot at, or like it's kind of Overwatch fire with transports, which you shoot at their infantry that disembarked. You can give them sustained hits when your infantry is near transports. It's pretty cool. However, they have a stratagem that allows you to disembark at the end of any phase. It is mechanically incredibly weird. A disembarkation out of sequence is strange because oftentimes it's not clear whether that supersedes normal disembarkation restrictions. So like whether or not you can disembark after a transport advances. I don't think you can, but also it's random. It's essentially totally random whether or not those restrictions apply within the same phase that you're disembarking, or within the same turn that you're trying to disembark. So it's like this gotcha strat that can let you do some things that are probably unintended. And I'm almost like, is it worth even like spending time on this detachment? Because the detachment may transformatively change in like 2 weeks. But I don't know. Well, we have yet to see. So we have a Baroque Hero Master with Trivarg Cyber Implant, which is pay 2 yield points against sustained hits 2, and you disembark a transport. Probably jumping into a big unit of Baroque Hero Thunderkin with SP Heavy Conversion Beamers. That's what we got. Or SP regular Conversion Beamers, the heavy ones on the Hecaton. Because they get 4+ critical hits when they trigger their conversion, so they go kind of wild once they jump out of a land fort. 2 Memnir strategists. We're seeing like 1 Memnir as just a utility guy because they're so cheap, which I think is kind of funny. He's the like army support guy. He's there to like do a bunch of complex calculations, and they're like, go over there and fucking diffuse that minefield. He's like, oh, do I have to? And they're like, yeah, use all your little tiny mechadendrites to do it. Uthar the Destined, Hearthkin Warrior Squad, Capricus Carrier, +1 Sagittor. So the Sagittor is cool because it broadcasts your sustained hits buff to your infantry, even if they can't actually embark in it. It just has to have the transport keyword. Same with the Capricus Carrier. Plus, it lets you split the Hearthkin Warriors, which is always really valuable. Having 2 units of Hearthkin Warriors rather than 1, incredibly good. And little beam cannon with sustained hits sometimes just vaporizes people, which is cool. What's interesting is that we have a big unit of Baroque Hero Thunderkin, a Graviton Blast Cannon unit, plus the SP Conversion Cannon unit for the buff. So another unit that can hop out and gain that sustained hits and do a bunch of damage. Now, normally we would see Baroque Hero Thunderkin just buffing the transports with the ignore cover, but it seems like we're kind of doing the opposite here. Because you can also give them reroll 1s to hit when you shoot at an enemy. With Illuminated Priority is the name of the strat. You shoot a vehicle at an enemy, and then you give reroll 1s to hit, which obviously can trigger more sustains, and is good for these like high volume, high impact, like Baroque Hero Thunderkin units. 45-point character, pretty nuts. Yeah, it's like a lot of factions have them though. It's basically the Blade Guard Ancient that you see in Space Marine sometimes, where he's like 50 points and he's just like a guy with a banner. He like doesn't even have a weapon. He has like a pistol. He's like, I'll hold your home objective, boss. Don't worry about me. It's funny when that happens though, because like GW loves to print, because it's probably hugely, the value proposition for Games Workshop is probably enormous. They're like, here's a character. It's 1 model. It costs us like 12 cents to make, and we can charge you, because it's a character, we can charge you like $40 for it. So they love making these one-off characters that do nothing. And Ancients are the perfect example. They love Ancients. There's so many fucking Ancients in the 40k now for Space Marines. They're the new Primaris Lieutenant. And that's just what they end up doing on the tabletop, is like being a little guy who runs up and does nothing. Except he gives up Assassinate when he dies. So if you go do engage in all fronts with him or whatever, and then your opponent draws Assassinate, you just get punished, which is the downside, which is very funny. We've got let's see, double land fort, Fernkin Jaegers, plus Vulcanite Disintegrator, Ironkin Steeljack unit, another great unit to have. The what do you call it? The sustained hits on when they're nearby the transport. A melee Ironkin Steeljack, a little bit of a counterpunch unit there, I guess. The strange part is though that none of the effects I think there's literally no synergy with melee attacks whatsoever in this detachment. Yeah, they literally have no buffs, but it is a good unit to be delivered by the land fort, and it is a good unit to use the stratagem to disembark at the end of any phase, because you can run the transport up to an objective, then disembark the unit end of the shooting phase and charge with it, which is probably what we're using these guys for. These 2 units of Ironkin Steeljack units. They don't get any bonuses, but it's really easy to deliver them. And that's why I say these lists are a little bit weird, because I have a suspicion that the interaction is going to get nerfed, but I don't know that for sure. So it's like there's like an asterisk on all these Brandfast Oathband lists. Not that I think they're like wildly overpowered or anything. Votann feels like it was definitely like kind of one of the codexes of all time. Especially because a lot of their weapon profiles didn't go up that much, even though they lost +1 to hit and wound. So I don't know. I don't know, chat. Last but certainly not least, we have Chaos Space Marines with a cult, which is cool. So another bit of a like teams only kind of deal. Very similar to the Creations of Bile list, where you're pushing really heavily to try to like basically wall your opponent out of being able to score primary. This army is doing a very similar thing. So it's running a commune with incendiary goad. I have to remember which ones all these are. Usually they're like take damage to do more damage to your opponent. Is essentially what the deal is. Incendiary goad is while you're below starting strength, you get +1 strength. While you're below half strength, you get +1 attack as well to the entire unit. And then so they're inside of a cult, a cursed cultist mob. There they are. And then you can ensure that you take damage by doing desperate pact checks to get yourself additional movement. It's likely that you take damage when you get that, so then you get the +1 strength immediately as soon as you trigger that. We've warped Foresight on a dark commune, which is scout. You get 6-inch scout. Plus another dark commune. Sorcerer, Terminator Sorcerer, I think largely just for utility, because he can hop down and then do +1 AP with Twist of Fate. Or Death Hex, excuse me, is his ability now. Cultist mobs ×2, Traitor Guardsmen ×3, 1 Rhino, bunch of Accursed Cultists, and then 3 Predator Destructors to sort of like hang out with the Sorcerer. So we have good shooting. We have a lot of really powerful melee. The Accursed Cultists, with all the buffs you can give them in the detachment, we have a lot of strats to improve their damage and speed. They can Desperate Pact to go faster, and then you have a scouting unit that can scout, move, trigger their once per game ability, advance and charge, get into your opponent's deployment zone, wall them, and then you set up 2 more Accursed Cultist units to do it on the subsequent turns. You're shooting them with the Predator Destructors as that's happening, and then basically you just have all of these little tiny units everywhere. Traitor Guardsmen everywhere, Cultist mobs everywhere, that can just score your primary as you're doing that. So very good for teams. A little bit inconsistent for singles, as we've talked about. Like stuff like Creations of Bile and stuff like these really aggressive armies do sometimes just get like bricked out by an army that's good at infantry sweeping and also resilient. But for teams, when you can massage your matchups, it works really well, and it gets you 20 O's, which is big. I'd actually be interested to see if that was where a lot of their points came from. 15-5 in the finals. 11-9. Although Thousand Sun's very good against those styles of lists. Actually lost to Drukhari. No, unfortunately, he did okay. There's the 20. We found the 20. Yeah, just walled off Chaos Knights into their deployment zone. Make sure they can't get to the terrain, so they can't like tower through it, and then you just vibe. Where did the team go? Rex. The Rex Hammer Super Happy Fun team. You love to see it. Yeah, there's a 20-0 as well. Yeah, so he did get some good ones where he was able to just blow out his opponents. Although they destroyed this team, 86-14. Oh boy, yeah, yucky, absolutely disgusting. All right, chat. Well, that's what I have to say about team events. So, still Chaos Knights seeing some play. I'd actually seen a lot of teams had dropped Knights entirely. But it looks like for the ones that won the events were 1 super heavy list in. And in some cases, 2, if you also include things like the triple grid and clean one list we looked at. And then 1 for 5-player events, 1 army that is like trying to push board control really hard, and then the other armies are relatively standard. That was like generally the meta game that I saw evolving. And if you could finagle your super heavy Knights list into an army that either couldn't deal with it or it had good profiles against, and you could finagle your board control, sort of your big hammer army, your high scoring army, into another matchup, you could open up a situation where you could sort of bring yourself up to get 2 big wins and and take things out from there. And that seems like, at least for smaller events, because these were all 5 or 6 player team events. That's how these teams were seems like they were approaching things. But anyway, Chance, anything else we want to talk about? Oh, we can talk about the new Drukhari. There's new Drukhari out today, which is kind of fun. The Lady Malice is an interesting model. I think I like her. They've executed the aesthetic well. It might just be the way they've photographed her, and it is an Eldar model. So, like, in fairness, this is sort of the vibe. But her waist is so small. It's like, it looks like she's gonna fold in half. I think it's partially because her shoulder pads are also huge, but it's like the angle, her sword's in the way here, but it looks unnatural. And then maybe it's supposed to look unnatural because, it's Eldar or whatever. It looks kind of silly, though, in my opinion. A friend of mine pointed out that her face is like made of Play-Doh, which you can kind of see. It's not the best executed face of all time, but I don't know. I don't think faces are like so small on the miniature that that never ends up being a huge deal for me. I've always found. Wasp waist, corset battle gear, yeah. I do like this tail she has. This is an aesthetic I think is really cool. The stuff with the interlinked like spine look. Always, I like that. I used to LARP back when I was in college. And I had a suit of armor that had something like this on it, and I thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever. So that's very cool. I like the hair. The hair is like rendered really nicely. The fan of blades is cool. Otherwise, the model's like executed well, but it's that waist thing, man. It's getting me. It looks like silly. She looks like she's gonna fall over. I don't know, chat. She does look like Shadowheart. I thought that immediately too. Yeah, I was like, right, because it's the hair piece and the top knot. Immediately looks like Shadowheart. Yeah, that was and the bangs. What's the development cycle? 2 years. They had to know, right? Like, come on. This is the same picture. When did Baldur's Gate 3 came out? Oh, actually, she was in it previously, though, right? Because they betaed it previously. Baldur's Gate 3 was 2023, and we are almost exactly 2 years later. We are 2 years and 1 month later after August of 2023. Shit. I think this is just Shadow Hearts. I think that's explicit. The timeline lines up. Yeah. In Shar's name. Yeah, I think that timeline makes sense. That's very much fucking Aun Vav, versus like Halo 2 vibes, right? It's like 3 years after, and it's just the same design. Extremely similar. Yeah. Definitely a little bit of she's even got like a little amulet thing too. Like they had the little puzzle box in that game. Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty similar. Obviously, Lady Marilis has existed as a character from before that, but she never really had like an aesthetic, like a vibe. She was, I think, described as using like poison fans and knives and things, but I don't think she ever had a official artwork, I guess, right? Her hair even turns from black to white. That's so true, actually. That's just that's just so that they could execute the poison tipped like ponytail braids there, right? I do like the model though. I think she needs to be slightly less anorexic, maybe. I don't know. That's it's just, it wigs me out every time I look at her. Immediately I'm just like, This model doesn't look right because of the shoulder to hip ratio is bizarre. But other than that, I think it's very well executed. She looks super badass. It's cool to see like Games Workshop actually executing a woman in armor and making it look super cool. You know, she's I like that they're slowly but surely getting away from just like the BDSM like bullshit for Drukhari, because I think that's like kind of demeaning, to be honest. And I think the faction has so many cooler aesthetics than just being like, I don't know, just like fucking goth bikini chick or whatever. Looking good. It's looking good. New Archon. I unironically did not know this was a new model the first time I read this. I was like, oh, that's cool. They repainted the Archon. And I'm like, no, it's new. Like, oh, okay. It sure looks like the old Archon. Part of what I was a little worried about with the Drukhari re-release is that the models are not new, but they are not that old. In the grand scheme of Warhammer 40,000, they do follow the more recent design ethos, which means they mesh very nicely in with the rest of the range, right? And I was like, you resculpt them and all you do is increase the definition, but I don't know if it's going to change that much once they get like a re-release. Things like witches and Cabalites, like I could see it, they're a little chunky. But the rest of the army is like, I don't know if you're going to get that much value out of a redesign. Cool new artwork, though. Look at this fucking guy. He's rad. Good stuff. Look at that. Last Drukhari refreshes 2010. Yeah, I know. But like you take Drukhari next to, like, what's more recent, right? Drukhari, let's go to Games Workshop and look at, like, I don't know, like a fucking kill team. I don't know how to navigate the Games Workshop website. I'm having trouble, chat. Help me. Someone help me. Let's look at an Eldar Aspect Warrior. How's that? They came out like a couple months ago, right? Games Workshop has like a corporate style. They've decided this is what a Warhammer 40,000 model should look like. It has defined lines. It has this like heroic proportion. Big face, big hands, big feet, big weapons. Kind of a funny torso, like a sort of a small, subdued torso. You take this look and you juxtapose it with the old Drukhari. The old Drukhari used the same design dock. So you put these two models together. This model's 15 years old. This model came out yesterday. These are in the same range, right? These are not wildly different models, like miniatures. So if you did a resculpt of these guys, you'd be like, oh, it's going to be so much better. They're going to look so much better. They're going to look the same with slightly more dynamic poses, right? And then like the parts will like look nicer. You know what I mean? Like the creases will be more defined. The injection molding techniques used will be more modern. However, the difference between the old model and the new model will not be great. I'm calling it now. Just because they have such a defined style and they require all of their sculptors to follow that style to the point where everything looks like it kind of belongs together. That's all I mean. Classic reaction from 2014? Maybe that's true. I think they all released together, though. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, it doesn't matter. My point still stands. You could replace Rack with a Cabalite Warrior, and it would be the same deal, right? Like, if we look at a Cabalite Warrior, like I said, I think the Witch Kit looks terrible. Unironically, I think the Witch Kit needs a redesign because it doesn't look good. But we take a Cabalite Warrior, and we take an Eldar Guardian, right? A more recent miniature executing a very similar theme. They're not going to look that different. They're going to like their helmets are going to look better. They're going to have better pose or whatever. And they're like, is that, I don't know. I don't know. And I kind of feel like this is happening, right? This Archon, you look at versus the old Archon, he looks better. He's more defined. He's more characterful. He's less boring. He's a cool plastic kit. But it's the same model. Like nothing's really changed. That's all. That's all I think. Refreshes need to look like the old models, but then like why even do them, you know? Like if the model is a 7 out of 10 and you could replace them with an 8 out of 10, is it like okay. I don't know. I guess I don't really see the necessity or the excitement. Outside of the fucking witches. The witches are horrible. I hate these models. The models are so bad. They're so weird looking, and I like these guys. I like the gladiator, like cyberpunk guys, and I want witches to be that. I want them to be cyberpunk ninjas. I don't like all these like pigtails and stuff. I think it's bizarre looking and executed poorly. Like scourges. We need a new scourge kit. I don't know. I feel like the scourge is probably okay. These guys look amazing. Look at catechins. Yeah, I mean catechins are old. They're old and bad looking. But like this Archon, you know what I mean? Like I'm not upset that Archons are getting a new miniature. I just don't think I don't really care, I guess. Like the old Archon is like fine. There's an Archon miniature. Can I see him? He on the GW website? I searched for Archon and there's like 100 kill team entries. What is this? What is happening? Hand of the Archon. Oh, it's in every language. it's this rules deck in every language. Okay. All right. There he is. Here's Archon. It looks fine. He's opposed as boring as sin. It's a fine model. I don't know. It's cool, I guess. There's a new Archon. He looks the same. Actually, that case he doesn't actually just look the same model. They're making his base bigger, I guess. Cool. So we can fit more tactical rocks. He doesn't have a cloak made out of people anymore. That's the difference. Which I do like. I like that he's a little bit more refined. They're a little cartoonish in this one, but otherwise, he's just the same guy. Yeah, weird flex, yeah. Anyway, chat, I think that's it for me for this live stream. Now, that being said, I'm going to look at my Discord real quick before I hop off because there is a T5S2 invitational game being scheduled for tonight. The first of the semifinal games post-cut. But the players have not told me when it is. I've set an event for 6 p.m., so about 2 hours from now. I think that's when it'll likely happen, but I don't know. So stay tuned, I guess. I'll be live later with some invitational gameplay. I don't know when it's happening, but it will be tonight. So anyway, here's I'm going to redirect you to that live stream, so I'll see you all over there. That's going to be Eldari versus Astra Militarum. And I'll see you in a little bit. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow with a normal live stream. So I'll see you then. I don't know what to talk about, but we'll be cool and fun. And otherwise, we will be live later on. So cheers, everyone. Keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.